Welcome to the Chronic Spoonful podcast, where we discuss real life with real chronic illness. Each week, we'll cover an aspect of real life spoony living and what that can mean for different chronic illnesses. We hope this will be a place you can go for updated spoony info and where you'll find humor, because, we're a little crazy, important information, and community. As a disclaimer, we just want to remind you that yes, we'll be talking about chronic illness and health information, but we are not your doctor. Everyone's chronic illness is different, and we are absolutely not MDs, so we are not qualified to give you medical advice. We're going to tell you unequivocally to discuss anything we talk about on this podcast with your doctor. All right, so now that we've gone through all our disclaimers, we are going to talk again about what's new and noteworthy this week. So we hope you all had a great week. We'd love for you to share it with us. Tell us how your week's been going. You can do that in the comments on the podcast, or you can go to our Facebook page, go to our Facebook group. We do have a private group where you can share. We have other social media, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, but we'd love to hear about what's happening with you guys as our listeners. We want to know, we appreciate you very, very much. But, we love to talk about what's going on in the news and all that stuff. And of course, COVID is just always on our minds in the news. And the continued opening up of everything, and the CDC making the announcements that we don't need to be wearing masks if we're vaccinated, and that they're potentially going to be announcing that masks aren't necessary in offices anymore if people are vaccinated. And I think it's gone on ad nauseum everywhere that everyone is talking about it. So I don't want to continue to bang it into people's heads. But we know a lot of you are anxious. We know that there's a ton of nervousness about this, and we did an episode on this kind of timely without knowing all this was going to happen a couple of weeks ago. We're like, we should do an episode on this, and then the CDC made this announcement. It was so weird. I honest to goodness, neither one of us has any insight into what the CDC is going to do. Maybe we're just psychic, we don't know. But but if you guys want to go back and listen to that episode, we'll put a link to that in the show notes also. But you can go back and listen to how you can cope with that anxiety. But we just encourage you, if you're not comfortable, just continue to wear a mask. It's okay. I'm going to still be wearing a mask. Nicole is still going to be wearing a mask. I'm not giving up on masks yet. I don't want to get COVID. I actually like that I didn't get the flu this year.
Me too.
I love that I didn't get a cold.
Me too.
So those are bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't get a sniffle.
No, I didn't either. That's
kind of nice. So don't feel bad if you still want to wear a mask. Still do it. There's going to be plenty of us out there. I've seen many interviews. So a lot of people are still going to be wearing them. A lot of businesses are still going to be requiring them for a while. They're erring on the side of caution. So wear your masks, share your stories. If you need encouragement on that, come into the Facebook group. We'll talk about it. Send us an email. We're glad to have a conversation about it. But
definitely. And remember, you guys, that you can still spread COVID. If you've had the vaccine, you can still catch COVID. The vaccine was hopefully supposed to also be so that you wouldn't get severely sick and die. So it's protecting you from death, hopefully, and also protecting other people from getting it from you. But you can be a carrier and you can still get COVID. So please understand that. It's extremely important that these things are understood so this doesn't become crazy again and spiral out of control.
Correct. All right, Nurse Nicole, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, it's true. I don't want to get COVID, and I can still get COVID, and I have no idea how it's going to affect me. And that's not a doom and gloom thing. I'm trying to be positive about this. I'm really glad that I got vaccinated, and it's likely that I won't get a severe case of COVID. That's so great. That makes me feel way safer going out of the house to the grocery store, let me tell you. And it makes me feel so much better with my dad, my dad going to the grocery store.
Sure.
it used to freak me out, but now I'm like, okay, it's a little bit better, but he wears a mask because a mild case of COVID, we don't know what that's going to do.
No, and people have been ending up in the hospital. We've had, I believe they said here, 98 people hospitalized who were vaccinated with COVID. They were sick enough that they had to be hospitalized.
Yeah. I mean, he's 83.
Mm-hmm.
In a couple of days, he'll be 84. So, I just don't want to take chances. And
No.
I err on the side of caution. I stay on that side where I'm like, I don't want to take chances. And people can call me a nervous Nelly and they can call me whatever they want, but I'm going to stay on that side of wearing a mask for a while.
And I'm going to stay out of groups of people, and I'm still not going to go to parties. And there's things that I know as a chronically ill person, but also as somebody in my late 40s that I need to, be really careful. I don't want long haulers. I don't want to have to deal with COVID, period, if I don't have to.
No, like who wants COVID anyway? Like in a mild case, ew.
I know.
I hate the flu. Why would I
was going to say, I don't even want a cold, let alone COVID.
Right? Ugh. So anyway, we're with anyone who wants to wear a mask. We, Zoom mask party. Woo woo.
Yes.
So that's kind of where we are with COVID. And, it's been kind of as far as like personal news, for me, it's been just kind of a discouraging week. I have a really fun wrist sprain and my ligament keeps popping in and out. So like, if you hear me gasp, it's probably because I moved my wrist the wrong way. And it's super fun. And I'll be spending some time with doctors trying to get that to stay in place for a while. And so I love having EDS. That's super fun. So if you want to know more about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because it is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome awareness month, woo woo. That was last week's episode. So you can hear really fun stories about that. So that's my news for this week. Yay!
Yay!
And then Nicole, you have news. You have better news for this week than I do.
Well, May is also Lupus Awareness Month. And so I was talking to one of my friends who I made a friend in one of the groups that I was in when I first was diagnosed. And she told me she moved and she lives by Johns Hopkins Hospital in Maryland. She told me that Johns Hopkins is doing a study for people like us that are sick and have, possibly no B cells, or that, there's cancer patients who are in the same boat as I am with no B cells or no ways to tell.
What B cells are? Can you explain to the group what B cells are so that people understand that?
They're a type of cell that helps basically you build immunity. They work with your T cells. So normally you need T and B cells to work. They work, and obviously it's better if you look it up because it gives a better explanation than I can give, but they both work together so that you're protected. So I don't have B cells because I went through chemo for 3 years for my lupus. And I was on Rituxan. This specific type of chemo eradicates your B cells. So cancer patients who are on this also have no B cells. So the study is actually called the COVID-19 antibody testing of patients with chronic conditions. So if you want to know more about the study, please go to Johns Hopkins. We'll put the link in the show notes. So you can just link to it. And you can actually be a volunteer in any state. They just send you to LabCorp and they take your blood 7 days before your second shot. If you've been fully vaccinated, they wait a month after the second shot. Then you get tested again in 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. So hopefully I will grow some B cells back. Right now I had blood drawn yesterday. I'm sure that I'll come back absolutely negative because I don't have B cells, so nothing's going to show up. They don't have a blood test to test whether you have some T cell immunity. So basically I have to consider myself an unvaccinated person, even though I will be fully vaccinated as of Friday. Well, I should say that I will have all my shots complete. 2 weeks after that, I would have been vaccinated, but it's kind of a waiting game right now. And it's going to be interesting to see if my B cells do grow back, how my antibody test will change over the course of 12 months.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I'm excited.
I am too. I'm excited.
I'm excited to follow this. My science side of my brain is like, I so want to follow this path. This is kind of exciting.
Yes. So, yes, it is. It's neat. It's going to be neat.
It's going to be neat. So yeah, Yeah, we definitely will put this in the show notes. The link will be in there if any of you want to participate. But Nicole will probably give us updates on upcoming episodes
Yes,
as to
I definitely will.
what we see. It's exciting to see what this research reveals too.
And if they can think of something to help people like us who need immunity, but we don't have B cells. So is there another test we can do? Is there a test that can be created? I mean, there really needs to be a lot of research because there are so many millions of people that are compromised in some way that are not going to get the full benefit or any benefit from the vaccine.
Right.
That's a big concern.
Which is like, so I was really, I tweeted this from our account a few days ago, but I was really excited when on The View, because yes, I'm one of those people who watches The View, that they actually talked about this. I mean, it's something that's not talked about that much. And they were talking about wearing masks and people taking their masks off and going places, but you know, they brought it up that there's millions of people who aren't going to be able to take off their masks, and this is a very nerve-wracking time for them because they're immunocompromised and they could get the shots, but they don't know that they're truly vaccinated against the virus. And I was so excited to hear them talk about it because, and I was so thankful that I actually tweeted out a thank you to them because, you know, this study is so important because there are so many people still left that aren't going to have this immunity or aren't able to have this immunity. And what are we going to do? Like, just say, oh, stay at home, don't go out. No, we still need people to be productive members of society.
And to be able to interact. People need communication. They need to feel like they're being able to have their hand held or to be hugged or anything. Yeah. I mean, this is just, it's like, I feel like I'm more of a shut-in now than I ever have been in my entire life. That's why I was so upset about the announcement, because I'm like, okay, we haven't even vaccinated kids, like little kids, which are some of the biggest carriers. So you're telling me that other people can take off their mask, although they could possibly be carriers from their kids. Then they're talking to me and I get COVID. I mean, this is so ridiculous.
I know. And I can hear you like kind of getting angry.
Oh, it just makes me livid.
Yeah. So it's hard. It's so hard. Like it goes beyond that. Like, because you're immunocompromised, but like, I'm not immunocompromised, but I don't even know how COVID would affect me and my chronic illness. Like, we haven't even studied that. We haven't studied how COVID really affects people with comorbidities. We haven't studied long-term effects of COVID, even a mild case. Like, there's so many things right now. And I know people want to get out there and I know people want to take off their masks, but there's so many questions.
Yes.
And again, I'm a cautious person. I like to know all the answers. I am that person. I want to know all the answers. I want to know as much as I can about things. And there's too many questions still.
There is.
So I'm really appreciating this study that you're participating in. I really hope it comes up with some answers.
I hope so too. And I really do.
I think it's really exciting news. So anyone else who wants to participate, that's great. Again, we can share updates in the group. I'm really promoting this Facebook group because I think these groups are awesome for sharing information. So yeah. I find them really helpful. And I've found them really helpful throughout my journey, which is, I think, what we're going to talk about next is our journeys.
Yeah.
The road to diagnosis and being kind of a newbie to being diagnosed. And I don't think we've actually talked, we kind of talk a little bit about it throughout most of our episodes, but we haven't really devoted anything to it because both of us have kind of sat here as like, well, we're diagnosed and we're going to just kind of talk about living our lives with this. And we've kind of accepted our diagnosis, like, hey, we have these, we have lupus, we have EDS, we have fibromyalgia, we have X, Y, and Z. I feel like some people who are listening or might start listening, maybe they're still on their road. Maybe they haven't been diagnosed yet, or maybe they're brand new to their diagnosis. So if that's you, this is totally going to be your episode today. Yes. Totally going to be it. Or if you've been diagnosed for a while, you're going to listen, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I remember feeling this way.
Oh God, yes.
And you're going to have so much advice to share. Because you're going to be like, oh, guys, you totally forgot about this when you're first diagnosed. Hi. There's so much to share.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing I remember on the road to diagnosis is discouragement. Everyone telling you that you're faking it, or that what you're feeling isn't real, or misdiagnoses. The million doctors you see on the way to diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Nicole, it took you much longer to get diagnosed than it did.
Lupus is considered the great imitator. So many things imitate lupus, and it takes a lot of time to actually get a diagnosis. My doctor, I had seen 3 doctors. I saw 3 doctors and they were terrible. And we finally said, no, we're going to go with the big guns. So we went to the city to find my doctor. And my doctor was actually pretty world renowned. She's very good. She's since not working. She also had lupus, so she can no longer work. But my new doctor is also phenomenal. But I went down there and she saw that I had the lupus rash on my cheeks. And there was a medication she was going to give me. And she said, if I give you this medication for RA, it will throw you into such a severe lupus flare, we would probably end up hospitalizing you. So I was like, yeah, we're not going to do that, med. That's good. So we waited longer. I got put on Plaquenil. And finally, the diagnosis came through. And I think it took around 3 years for me to get but I was sick as a kid. I was always sick as a kid. I was sick as a teenager. Then I got mono when I was 19. And that's kind of what kicked off all these symptoms. And I never felt the same after that. I think that kind of like triggered my lupus. So it was rough. I remember sitting on my friend's couch, helping her move into her apartment. And my doctor called and said, hey, we got the test results back and you have lupus. And sadly enough, lupus really isn't. A lot of autoimmune diseases and mixed connective tissue diseases are not taught to student nurses. You kind of have an overview. So in nursing school, I did not learn much about any of these diseases. So when she called me, I was like, oh, all right. Thanks. I didn't think anything of it until I called my friends and I called my mom, and everybody completely freaked out. And they were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, why are you sorry? What is going on? I knew what lupus was, but I didn't know the full extent of how lupus could get. So I just didn't think it was a big deal. To be honest with you, I was kind of just glad to be diagnosed. And then I did my research and was like, oh hell, I'm in for a long ride. Yeah.
But I think going into it, like your road, I remember people telling you were a hypochondriac.
Yep. All the time.
I had people telling me I was just clumsy when I was walking into walls all the time, or tripping over things, or like, bones creaking, dislocations, like just no one puts it all together.
No.
You feel this like discouragement because you're like, I'm exhausted all the time. And people are like, oh, you just need to exercise more, or try this or try that. And no one is putting your pieces together because you're seeing 10 different doctors for 10 different things. Like, your teeth are bad. So you see a dentist. You're having ear infections. So you're seeing an ENT. Your knee keeps dislocating, so you're seeing a doctor for that. No one puts your pieces all together. And honestly, doctors aren't taught that much about like these different disorders, and that's why we're called zebras, right? Because there's the whole saying of doctors are taught when they hear hoofbeats to look for horses. They're not taught they don't think that it might be zebras. So we're called zebras because they're not taught to look for us. So they're going to look for the easiest thing. Like when I went in for my gastrointestinal issues, they were looking for GERD. They were looking for all these things. They were looking for mast cell.
And usually you do start with the smallest thing, work your way up.
Is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So part of the discouragement is they're looking for the easiest solution to your problem, and your problem is complex. You're going to need a lot of second opinions. You can't always trust your first opinion.
And even if you like your doctor, when you get your first opinion and you get a diagnosis, I would always encourage you to seek a second opinion, always.
Because sometimes they're going to give you something and you're like, it's just not working. And it's also key to find a doctor that will continue to work with you when things aren't working and continue to dive deeper. And that's important. It's not that your doctor's always going to get it on the first try, because again, zebras, it's unlikely they're going to get things on the first try, but that they have to continue to dive deeper into what's going on with you and continue to look for things, look for the clues, try to find you specialists that'll do a deeper dive. And you may need to fire a lot of doctors, because sometimes you'll see crazy doctors that say crazy things that just aren't right. And you'll also need to do some of your own research.
Yes.
You may need to get your own honorary medical degree.
Yeah.
We talked about that last week a little bit with Rachel, that as she went on and on, she kind of was getting her own honorary medical degree because she had to figure out some of the things that were wrong with her and do her own research into a lot of things.
Exactly. It's really important to know as much as you can yourself about your disease process. And, when you go online, it can really scare you. I was diagnosed with hidradenitis suppurativa. It's a skin disorder. And, my doctor luckily told me, just be careful when you're looking online, because it's a terrifying disease. And it really is. And I started looking through all these articles and joined a group, and I was so scared. And she's like, you have a very, very, very mild case and it probably will never get worse. But I was terrified when I read on it. It was awful.
Well, also, when you're on your way to diagnosis and you start looking at some of your symptoms online, you can scare yourself into thinking, I have stage 4 liver cancer and I'm gonna die. No, slow down. It's good to understand how you feel and what your symptoms are and what things can potentially be, but also allow your doctors to go through their diagnostic process. There are a million things that it could be. And, so that's part of it. But also, doctors also don't know every disease that's out there either. That's also a thing. So let's talk about then when you first get diagnosed. Let's go into that a little bit. So now you've finally gone through your diagnostic process. You found your good doctors. You got a good medical team. They've given you your diagnosis. One of two things happens at this point. You freak out because you've never heard of this disease before, or you're absolutely relieved because you finally have a diagnosis. And I think it's a little bit of both for most people. I think a lot of people feel relief because most people don't get diagnosed for years because it takes so long most of the diseases we deal with, especially with chronic illness patients, aren't that easy to diagnose. I mean, and we're yes, with some people it's simple, oh, your chronic illness is diabetes. It's a simple test, blood test, and they can test your sugar levels and all that, or it might just be high blood pressure, something like that. But when you're talking about a rare disease, these things take years. And they often are diseases that they have to rule things out.
Yeah.
So they're testing you for things that they actually have tests for. And then when you fail all your tests, then they're like, oh, you failed everything, so now you fit into this box. And that can be really hard because you keep getting these tests and they're like, you're normal, you're normal, you're normal. And you're like, but I'm not normal. I hurt all over.
Yeah.
And that can be really weird to be I have a disorder, but all my blood tests come back normal. All my, my nerve tests came back normal. This test came back normal, but now they just diagnosed me with a disorder.
Yeah. Or when you get diagnosed, I know for me, my blood work never reflects a flare. So it's really hard to submit that to the insurance company because most of my diagnostics are always, they always have been. It's really based on symptoms. Now my complements test once in a very blue moon will be slightly off, but I could be so sick, it's unbelievable. And my tests will all come back normal.
Yeah. So it's really hard. Like that whole process is hard, but like some people it can be 10, 15 years before they get a diagnosis. So when they get that diagnosis, it can be the biggest relief.
Yes.
Someone has finally put a name to what they've been feeling. And at the same time, it can also be kind of scary because now there's finally a name to what they've been feeling. And now they got to figure out what that means.
Definitely.
What does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
So at that point, I think you have to ask your doctor a ton of questions. But here you are, and you just got this diagnosis, and your doctor will say, do you have any questions? And you're like, but I don't even know what this thing is. And that should be your first question. Like, well, what is this? You know, what does this mean? What are my treatments? Like you'll have the big questions, right? Those are the normal questions. What is the disease? What are the treatments? What's the plan from here? Those are the big questions, but those aren't going to be your only questions, right? Like you're going to come up with other questions. So it's important to see if you can get your doctor's email or a place where you can contact them.
Like my chart.
Yeah, like my chart. My chart's the best.
Yeah, it is great.
To ask them questions. Now, if you do email them or use my chart to ask them questions, be patient with your doctor.
Yeah, they're very busy.
They're very busy. They do have other patients. Your question, unless you're bleeding out, and if you're bleeding out, really, you go to the emergency room. Your question is not an emergency, even though you might be freaking out about this new disorder you have. Be patient with your doctor. They will normally get back to you within 24 hours, but just be patient because honest to goodness, they have a lot of patience. But that's a great way to communicate with your doctor. If your doctor is unwilling to answer your questions about your disorder, I question your doctor.
Yeah.
Like your doctor needs to be there for you with your disorder because you're going to be going through this now for the rest of your life. You need a support system from your medical team. Okay. So just make sure you're able to communicate well with your doctor. So make sure you ask your doctor lots of questions. And then you're going to go home and you're going to look your disorder up online. And I laugh because the first thing that's going to happen are that's going to come up, and Nicole touched on this, are the worst case scenarios.
So true.
And then you're going to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die or be a vegetable in the hospital.
Yes. So true. It's so terrifying to look online. And a lot of the information isn't even correct. Remember that. But I mean, it's so terrifying when you start looking up your disease. It's like, oh my God, I never knew that was a thing. That can happen.
When Nicole told me she had lupus, my first, I was lucky because I had ghostwritten a white paper on it. So I had a ton of information. But if she had told me just a couple of years before that she had lupus, I would have freaked out because my only understanding of lupus was seeing a movie with Matthew Modine called Grey's Anatomy, not the TV show. This was a movie. And the professor had lupus and she died from lupus in the movie. Spoiler
alert. I never saw that one.
Oh my gosh, it's a really good movie.
My God, that sounds so depressing.
He's in medical school and his professor has lupus. It's really, really good movie. Loved it because I loved Matthew Modine back in the day.
I did too.
Yeah. Oh, reminisce. And but the professor had lupus and she turns out to be this great professor and they adore her. And she dies from her lupus.
So sad.
And it was devastating. And that was my only reference for lupus. So I thought people who got lupus eventually died. So now then I wrote this white paper and learned that no, they don't. And there's all these different types of lupus. I actually
Mhm.
knew a lot about lupus when she was diagnosed. So when she was diagnosed, I was like, what kind of lupus do you have? And she's like, how do you know this much about lupus?
Seriously. It was awesome though.
But like, seriously though, like you can get freaked out by these worst case scenarios, guys. Like if you don't know much, if all you've watched was one movie called Grey's Anatomy about lupus and this woman dies, it can freak you out when you first get diagnosed.
Very much.
You got to look up your disorder, but go beyond the first page of Google Images, guys. Really, it's do a deeper dive. Go like look up legitimate foundations, look up legitimate groups. Don't get caught up in the worst case scenarios. Really get off of them.
Yeah, and if you can, join some Facebook groups regarding your disease, because there's a lot of people that can tell you like what's really going on with this illness,
Yes.
You know, what their experiences have been. They can calm you down, encourage you, support you. They understand what you're feeling, and the support is just so important.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, now like sometimes in the Facebook groups it's people complaining about like, oh, this happened or that happened, but like literally it's just because they need a place to vent sometimes.
Yeah.
But understand they're living their daily lives, guys. And if you post in there like, hey, I was just diagnosed, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, you will be amazed how many people will come in and give you support.
Yes.
Tell you where to go, tell you what things you know, oh, let me help you. You can go here, you can go here. It's not that bad. I've lived with this for 20 years. This is what my life is like. You know, how old are you? What can I help you? Like there's so many people ready to support you.
Yeah.
Because they've been there with you. They want to help. And that's kind of what these groups do. Just ask the questions. People are ready to help. It's amazing. It's so amazing.
It really is.
And
also,
the foundations are ready to help too. There's so many foundations out there that offer all types all types of assistance depending on what you need. Like there's financial assistance if you need it. There's assistance for equipment. There's like the pet assistance for like, you know, to get you a service animal. There's
financial assistance.
Financial assistance with bills or medical bills.
And if need be, remember most hospitals offer financial assistance if you need it also.
Yes, they do. There's just so much out there. You just need to like do some, it takes time, guys, but like do research. Just spend some time doing a deep dive into it. I mean, I know it's like going down the Google rabbit hole, but that's what you have to start doing.
And make a list, you know, I keep a journal right next to me, and I write down every question that might pop up, something someone said to me in a group, new study that's coming out, something I've read in the paper about it. I keep a list, and when I have my appointments every 3 months, I bring my list with me. You can write it in the planner you guys have bought from us, you know, and you bring it in and say, okay, this is a list of questions. My doctor will sit there and go over all of them with me.
Yes. And that's what you want from your doctor. Yes. If your doctor's walking out of the room and not answering your questions, you've got to find a different doctor, because when you have a chronic illness, you need a doctor that's going to guide you through your chronic illness. Like it's not acceptable if they're not answering your questions.
Most definitely.
The other thing you need to research is your insurance. That is also a big deal, especially because you're going to start seeing a lot of doctors. So you need to go into a deep dive into what your insurance covers and doesn't cover, and how things need to be coded or phrased to make sure they're covered. It's something you probably never thought about before, probably didn't really like, because you're just a healthy person going to your doctor, regular checkups, easy peasy. But now you're going to start getting weird procedures. And sometimes doctors will write things in a chart and the billing department will code things funny, and then it goes to the insurance and the insurance will deny it.
Yes. You have to be prepared sometimes to fight. because there's a lot of that happens. And you can always call the insurance company and say, okay, how was this coded? Call the insurance, then you call the billing department back at your doctor's office and say, okay, this was coded wrong. When I go, medical will also cover vision if you have certain diseases, because you have to have your eyes checked every so often, but you have to make sure the eye doctor understands to code it under that disease process.
Right. And this happens more often than you think.
Oh God, yeah.
But it's just important to know what is covered and what isn't. It's also important when your doctor gives you a referral to check if that doctor that you're being referred to is covered by your insurance. Your doctor, a lot of times, is not going to check that.
Mm-mm.
They're just going to refer you to hopefully the best person that they know to refer you to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that person is covered and sometimes it's not. Like it might be in network or out of network, or they may not even take your insurance, your insurance. So it's really important to ask that question, because you don't want to get stuck with a bill from someone who's not covered.
Definitely.
And that's almost impossible to fight.
Oh yeah, I've had that happen. It sucked. So, I ended up paying like $300 for the visit, so yeah, I mean, always make sure if you can, that your doctors are in network. If there's someone like specialty doctor you have to see that's out of network, they still normally reimburse at like 60 to 70%, but just know that you'll have a higher bill at the end of the visit.
Correct. I mean, there's sometimes you can't get out of it's someone you have to see, but and sometimes you can negotiate those rates. That's the other thing. You can negotiate rates with doctors sometimes. And now there's the new laws about like transparency in rates, but because if doctors know you're paying out of pocket, they may like lower your rate, which is possible. Yeah. There's that too. Paying medical bills are such a special conversation.
Oh my God, yes.
It's just really important to ask if they're covered, because then you know what you're getting into when you're going to see a referral doctor. The other thing is, when you're going to see a referral doctor, is to do a deep dive into into that new doctor. Anytime you're going to see a new doctor, you need to research that doctor. Because yes, it's nice that the doctor you love is referring you to another doctor. It's lovely, but you don't know this doctor. And sometimes it's just they pick a doctor off of a list. You got to do a deep dive. You got to check their reviews. You got to check their vital reviews. Like, I think there's Vital Signs, there's Yelp, there's all that, but you've also got to check their medical board, the state medical board, to see what complaints have been filed against them. Take some of things with a grain of salt, because just because a complaint has been filed doesn't mean it's a valid complaint.
No,
or
definitely.
Just someone complains on Yelp, like read what people put. Because like I've read some 1-star reviews where it's literally, the office left me on hold for 20 minutes.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's not even about the doctor. Yes, all the time. I was 5 minutes. They made me wait 5 whole minutes.
So take some reviews with a grain of salt, but read through the reviews. Read through the 5-star reviews, because it may be that you read through the reviews and you're like, that's not a style I like. I don't like that style of whatever. Look through the pictures, make sure that office is what you would be comfortable in. You got to do a deep dive into your doctors, ask questions. And if you don't like that doctor, find a new one.
Yes.
It may take you time.
You may go through 3 or 4 doctors. Don't give up. Make sure that you are doing your research, but it's incredibly important that you have a good working relationship with your doctor.
Agreed. And that's because it makes you're already dealing with enough with your own body, and you're going to deal enough with medical bills and all of the extra stuff. Just make it easier on yourself to get along, like to have good doctors around you. Your medical team needs to be good.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to be fighting with your medical team all the time.
No.
It just makes everything easier. Okay, so now you've gotten your diagnosis, you've got your medical team, and you've got to tell at least some of the people around you you've got this disorder. This is also a fun thing. You guys, when you first get diagnosed, this is not the easiest time in your diagnosis. Like it gets easier. And the only reason I say it gets easier is because you kind of get used to things.
It's so true. It's weird, but it's so true.
But at first, it's like, it's kind of hard at first because there's a lot to do, right? You kind of got to tell some people that you have this disorder, and you're going to deal with some skepticism.
Yeah.
And you're going to deal with people being like, I don't really think that that's what you have. Do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Do you know anything about this disorder? And they're like, well, I've never, or like the best is I heard a story once where this woman went into her doctor's office and the nurse like was putting her into the room and asked her something. And she's like, well, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And the nurse is like, you don't have, what is that? You don't have that. I've never heard of that before. That's not a real disease. Wow. She had never heard of it before. It couldn't possibly be real.
You guys will get your own fun stories with medical staff and everything as you grow in your diagnosis. You will hear these fun stories often.
Yes, it was very, and I was like, you need to complain about that nurse. Like there's just no, just because she hadn't heard of the disease before. Like honestly, she knew every disease that exists ever. Let me pull out this book.
Right. It's like, thanks, Dr. House. Yeah.
It's not lupus.
That's right.
If you guys have never watched House, it's highly entertaining and slightly medically
disturbing.
Inaccurate.
Yeah, disturbing at times.
And if you're ever on Facebook, Dr. Mike, watch Dr. Mike. He's highly entertaining. He's one of my favorites on
He
Facebook.
really is. He's funny.
You're going to talk to people. They're going to be skeptical. They're going to tell you just need to exercise more, drink X, Y, and Z fancy drink that's going to cure everything for you. You don't really have this disease. You,
have you tried yoga?
Have you tried yoga? By the way, yoga and meditation are going to solve everything, as is a more positive attitude. Mm-hmm. One of our first episodes we did are on all the things you shouldn't say to people with chronic illness. You should definitely listen to that episode. It doesn't even touch on all the things you're going to hear. It's terrible. So it will prepare you for that, because you're going to get angry. You're going to get angry at people. It's probably going to hurt some of your relationships, because you're going to tell them you have something, and some people are going to say they understand, and then they're going to totally ignore that you have something.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes people won't be supportive.
But you also can't go into telling people and expect anything from them. No. You can't expect anything from the people you care about. You can't expect anything from the people you work with. And there are certain laws around the Americans with Disability Act. You really do need to look into that. Know what accommodations your employer has to give you, but you can't expect things from people. You're just not going to get everything you need from people. And I think that's one of the hardest things when you're first diagnosed, is you expect people to be sympathetic. You expect people to care about what you need. And one of the most disappointing things is you don't get it. You get it from a few people, and you get it sometimes, but you don't get everything you need from people. Mm-mm. And that's a really hard lesson.
Yeah.
Guys, and it hurts.
It does.
And it can make you very bitter if you let it. If you go in with the expectation that you're going to tell people you have fibromyalgia, and they're going to be like, oh, let me help you with that. You're in so much pain. You know, what's the doctor? Oh, no. You're going to get more of fibromyalgia is a made up illness. Have you tried yoga?
It's so true. Are you sure?
Are you sure that's what you have?
Are you sure you're not just getting enough sleep?
Yeah.
You haven't been working out lately, and you're not drinking enough water.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's unfortunately, you're going to get more skepticism than you're going to get caring. And you're also going to be told you're lazy. If you do require disability, you're going to be told that you're a leech on the state. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, you have to develop a really thick skin.
Mm-hmm. And surround yourself with people who actually do give a crap.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky because the people in my life are amazing, but I have heard horror stories from people that had family not care, friends not care, people walk away from them. So it can go the other way. I was very fortunate.
So I have a theory on all of that, and it's a harsh theory. Let them go. Let them go and find your family. Find your family. Find your people. And that's a really hard, harsh piece of advice. But you need the people who are going to be supportive. This is the time in your life that you can't, your energy has to be about you. Your energy has to be about treating your body, about treating how you're feeling, about getting to a baseline level that you can deal with. It can't be about fighting for people who aren't going to care for you.
100%.
That energy can't be put there. It just can't.
No, it'll tear you apart.
Yeah. So when we say that this is going to be one of the hardest things you have to deal with, like all that other stuff we said is tough and it's like a pain. This is a deep emotional pain. Let it go. Get into therapy. Get into therapy. That's another piece of advice. You'll need a therapist. Your insurance should cover some therapy. Talk to someone, but let some of these people go.
Yeah.
And find your family. That's why we say get into the Facebook groups, get into where people are understanding of you. And honestly, you'll find people.
You will. I've made some really close friends that have either the same illness or other illnesses, and we are each other's biggest supports most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, you will, and we don't want to be all doom and gloom. You will find people in your life that are supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely will.
But we just want to prepare you for the people that aren't, because surprisingly, you're going to dwell on it. You're going to dwell on you end up not dwelling on the people who are supportive. You dwell on these like jerky people.
It's so true. Why is that?
I don't know. It's like we're masochists and we dwell on the like pain of rejection or something. Yeah. So just know it happens. You have to work through letting that go. And and I'd say go back to that episode where we talk about all these terrible things that people say, because I think it's a really good episode to like prepare you for that.
Yeah.
When you have to tell the people you love you have a chronic illness, because it's tough, guys. It's really tough. And also, no, you don't have to tell people you have a chronic illness.
Nope.
People don't have to know. If you don't want to tell someone, don't tell them. It's not their business. It's not their business what you have. That's the other thing. You don't have to tell people why you're going to the doctor. And then I think the final piece of advice I think we have for everyone is take your time. Take care of you and take your time.
One day at a time is very important. Just take it one day at a time.
Nicole has gotten where she's gotten because she's been doing this. She got her diagnosis. You got your diagnosis, what, 18 years ago?
18 years ago, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got my diagnosis less than a year ago. Mm-hmm. What was it, a few months ago?
Yeah.
but I've been surrounded by people who have diagnoses. Yes. So I was prepared for I was well prepared for my diagnosis because I had people around me who had chronic illnesses. So I didn't get my diagnosis and freak out.
You were prepared.
I was well prepared for all of it. Like I had everything in order for the diagnosis. So it was different. Like I had so many people around me with chronic illnesses that they were like, okay, when they give you this, this is what everything you're going to need.
Yeah.
So I was just waiting for the diagnosis. Yeah, I had a little bit of a different support system. And so, but I know most of you don't have that. And we want to make sure that you guys are ready. Like, I want you guys to have, who are listening, to have what I had. That's what we're giving you right now with this episode.
Yeah.
That's what this entire conversation is. So, and it's taking your time. Psychologically, this is a lot to absorb, guys.
It really is.
I mean, Nicole, you kind of did this on your own.
Yeah, I did. I didn't know anybody sick. I did have people in my life who thought I was a hypochondriac. They weren't very supportive, and I promptly got rid of those people, but it was hard. I was scared because I didn't know enough. I was like, my first thought was, what's next? What do I do now? What's going to happen? How are things going to change? So I get it. It's really scary.
Yeah. Yeah. You worked through a lot of this on your own, and you learned a lot over the years. And that's why having those conversations with people who've already been through this is so important, because you can learn from what they know.
Definitely.
And asking the questions. But honest to goodness, guys, it is one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It is just breathing, taking a deep breath every day, not expecting much from yourself every day, and one day at a time. And knowing that we're here with you. We're all here with you. Everyone who's listening is here with you.
Yes. We definitely stand by your side.
Oh, yeah. If we could hold your hand, we would.
We would.
I mean, hands across America, baby.
That's right.
And across the world. Oh my gosh. Now I'm aging myself. Totally
we both are.
We totally did it. We totally got out of school. We got out of school that day, and we did hands across America. We all held hands.
Oh my God, I remember that.
Gosh, you guys. Okay, so this was a deep episode, and it brought like a lot of deep stuff. And we want to be encouraging, and we want you guys to know we are here. We are encouraging. And some of you, not so newbies, we hope that you can be supportive to the newbies. And we hope we didn't bring back too much drama. But more of like yes. I remember that. Oh my gosh, I've come so far. Yes. I hope that when we went through all this, you realize like you've really come far in your journey. And again, Nicole said it, like, we do have the planner. We have the planner that you can either get in a hard copy quarterly version, or a digital version that you can just continue to use forever and ever. And it will help you do everything we just talked about. Take notes, keep track of what's going on with your doctors, what's going on with your insurance,
your blood sugar, your blood pressure.
Yeah. So, it can really be helpful to any of you, especially new people that just, you really need to start keeping track of everything.
Definitely.
How you're feeling, what your water intake is. Because as much as people will give you the advice that you need to drink more water.
And it's usually true.
It is true.
All of us need to drink more water. Yeah.
It will not cure you.
Nope.
But it will make you feel better to drink more water, guys. I will always say that.
It's important to take care of your body, even more so when you're sick.
Yes. So it does have like an exercise section where you can track your exercise, can track your meals, how your meals make you feel. All of that. It's so important for us to track all of those things. So the planner is available. I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can go to our website. You can get it there. But you guys, we really we hope this episode is really helpful to everybody. We hope it wasn't too freak out-ish. If it was, go to our Facebook group and yell at us. We're glad to be yelled at, because we'll take that to heart. But we really hope you guys have a good week.
Yes.
And take care of yourselves this week.
Yes. Thanks for tuning in again.
All right.
Bye,
guys.
Bye.